We're moving to Chapter 5, Bank Services. The objectives are 5.1, Banking, Checking, Account, and Check Registers. 5.2, Checking Services and Credit Card Transactions. And 5.3, Bank Statement Reconciliation. 5.1, Banking, Checking, Accounts, and Check Registers. There's some banking terms that you're going to need to be familiar with. Most of these you've already been exposed to. If we use the terms automated teller machine, otherwise known as ATM, that is a machine connected to a worldwide network and used to make deposits, transfer money, pay bills, or get cash. Its use may result in a charge. A debit card, a card that looks like a charge card but instantly transfers funds from the purchaser's bank account to the merchant's. It requires a personal identification number. Direct deposit or payment allows for direct deposits to be made into an account or direct payments to be made from an account. Electronic commerce, or EC, is the buying and selling of products online or the internet. Electronic online banking, electronically transferring funds or paying bills used extensively by businesses and individuals. Mobile ticketing is the process of purchasing tickets using a mobile device. Prepaid cards or cards with a prepaid balance. Service fees, fees charged by a bank for low account balance, overdrafts, return checks, etc. Smart card is a card with an embedded microchip used to make payments, for example, Visa card. And point of sale, or POS, is the time and place where a sale is made at a retail store. Most of you have kind of grown up in the technology world that we're in today, where using debit cards and electronic transactions occur regularly and have occurred regularly in your lives. There was a day when most of us would either use cash or a checking account, writing a check out, a physical paper document that would be a method of payment. And we relied less on the banking systems, the electronic systems, and manually kept track of things so that we knew exactly how much money we had at all times. I know most of you, when you want to know what your bank balance is, you simply just get your phone out and access your bank account on your phones. Now, with the use of technology, with the additional use of technology, you do have risks associated with it, and one of those is identity theft. Identity theft occurs when someone gathers enough information about you to fraudulently establish credit cards or borrow money using your name and personal information. Most of us are a little concerned about this today, much more than we were back in the day, because it occurs more often now. It occurs more often because it's easier for criminals to steal your identity. So the little pictures here, the cartoonish pictures, kind of give you a reference point where a thief from the past used to run around with a gun and a bag full of money, while the thief from today sits at a computer desk, looks a lot like the average person with a computer and accesses accounts and transfers money without having to physically accost anyone. Even though we use the form of electronics to buy and sell goods all the time, to transfer money a lot more frequently than we have in the past, we still refer to our account that contains the money as a personal checking account. And these accounts are for individuals. The bank usually charges for the printing of the checks and often charges a monthly fee for any checking account whose balance falls below a minimum amount. These checking accounts often is when we use the ATMs or automated tellers machines to get funds, to get cash, we withdraw from our checking accounts. Some accounts even pay a little bit of interest. Now that's a personal checking. Again, a personal checking is really focused on individuals. A business checking account often is receive more services and have greater activity than to then personal accounts. In some cases, the bank will collect debts on behalf of the business, and the bank automatically credits the amounts to the business account. Now, the old school way of us paying for things, and when I say old school, I mean really old school, is the use of a paper check. You have an example on page 174 that shows you what they look like. You may or may not have been exposed to this in the past. I'm sure if you looked in some museum, you probably would find a sample of checks there. But believe it or not, they're often still used. You have the name and address of the account holder listed to the top left, and then you can review this graphic at your leisure, but it shows you what all the different parts of the checking account are, how you refer to them. And what's of note is the account number, which is listed at the bottom of the check. Often the bank number, or what is referred to as the routing number, is listed there. I'm convinced people don't like to use checks because they forget how to spell things. But okay, in many cases, there is a way to, in many cases, even today, probably not as much today as it was in the past. Today, most checking accounts are free. But there are still some accounts that you may open that do charge fees. And then certainly when I opened up my first bank account back in the 80s, might have been the 70s. I think it was the 70s. The structure of what we're looking at is exactly the way it used to be. So if you had a balance less than $500, your average balance was less than $500, then you would have a $12 monthly fee plus 20-cent charge for every check. If your average balance was somewhere between $500 and $19.99, then it would be a little bit less per month and still the per check charge. If you had a balance of $2,000 to $49.99, then it'd be a $5 charge and a 10-cent charge per check. And then if it was $5,000 or more, it would be free checking. Today, it's a little different. Today, most checking accounts are free anyway, but it's a good idea to learn how this is because there may be circumstances where we have to do something very similar. We can go through these specifically. Omni Computer, we're trying to figure out what the monthly service charge is for the following business accounts. So Omni Computer had 38 checks written. The average balance was $983. And based on the average balance of $983, we are to compute what the monthly fee is going to be. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to look at the chart here. The average balance is 983. Well, we'll look here. It's less than 500. Well, that doesn't apply. 983 would fall within this range here. And what this says is that you're going to get a monthly fee of $7.50 plus 20 cents per check. So it's going to be $7.50. That's the maintenance charge per month, plus 20 cents per check. Well, how many checks did we write? The problem tells you that you wrote 38 checks. 38 checks multiplied by 20 cents ends up being $7.60. So we're going to add the $7.50 plus the $7.60. The total fee for this example here, example A, is $15.10. You can follow the routine for example B. It's pretty straightforward. Now, in addition to the checks that you write out, there's also a physical deposit slip that we used to fill out back in the day. I think some companies still fill these out. I don't believe we do that at my office anymore. I think we just run a tape and we attach the tape to the checks, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so the deposit slip looks like this. You'll see the name, the date, and then the amounts are broken up by cash at the very top. And you may have various checks you're going to make a deposit in. You add up the total. That's the total amount. If you're going to withdraw any money or use it for personal purposes, then that would show it as a negative amount. So the actual amount to be deposited is listed at the bottom. So the total of these come up to $171.19. less the $40 gives you $131.19. Some additional things to know and understand about checks, even though they're not as common as they used to be, but we have what we have as an endorsement. When you endorse the check, you're making it so that it is now cashable. If you put a blank endorsement, and as an example here, this is Barbara Wifey, a blank endorsement. Well, if she writes her name like this and goes to the bank, she better not lose this check, because once you sign your name to it, you've endorsed it, and whoever holds the check now can then, they have a check that's been endorsed to them. Doesn't have to identify the specific individual, it just they endorse it to whomever. Once you sign it, it's endorsed. If you drop it, lose it, whoever receives it can get it and then turn around and cash that check. So be careful with that. What's actually better is a restricted endorsement. And when you do a restriction on the endorsement, you specifically state that it's for deposit only to a specific account. So then even though you have to have that signature, you specifically state that this has to go to a specific account. So in many cases in our office, the first thing we do is stamp the back of checks that we receive, and then we endorse it. And then you may have a specific endorsement where you're paying to the order of another person and then you sign it. So if you want to just give that check to somebody else, you can. You just have to state it on the back of the check and then sign it. Just remember, a blank endorsement is very risky. Now, as the check runs through, once you deposit that check into your bank account, it goes through a number of steps before it reaches its original check place. And there'll be a few stamps on the back and traces, where it goes through to the entire process. A canceled check is a check that is no longer valid. It's actually cleared the bank, so can't turn around and use it again. Once it's been through the system, it's already been. And so that's what all these marks are on the back of these checks, to show that the check is already cleared. You can't use it again. Now, in addition to the check, often, especially in business, you will have to the side what's referred to as a check stub. It actually is attached to the check, and the check will be perforated to the check stub, and you can tear from the perforation, you can tear off the check, but you use the check stub to record again what's written on the check. You record it again on the check stub so that you have something on record as to the date you wrote the check out, the amount, to who, and then you have now the ability to use that information to update your records. There's a sample of a check stub for check number 2724. All this information just came directly from the actual check. Now, we also have what's referred to as a check register. And for those of us who are mature, we remember that we used to keep a register. It was along with our checkbook. A register would be inserted into our checkbook. And so instead of a check stub that maybe a business might use, personally, you would write the check out and then update immediately your check register so that you have the information you need to update your balance. So here's an example of keeping your balance here and all the transactions that one would enter to show all the money that's going out and all the deposits. In the meantime, you're updating your balance at all times. So in other words, you are keeping track of your own balance. You're not relying upon a bank or others to really tell you how much money you have. You keep track of your own balance. That completes 5.1.